I just don't think it's fair for him to have to spend the rest of his life in prison.
As West Michigan and the nation searches for a way toward racial equity, one family hopes the momentum will give a Grand Rapids man a chance at freedom.
Eugene Atkins is serving life without parole in federal prison. He was 19 years old, a drug dealer in Easttown, when he sold heroin that killed a Granville teenager.
Atkins is now seeking clemency, something only the president can grant. Target 8 investigator Susan Samples has our story.
At first glance, you might not realize these images, so much like today, instead captured years before the Black Lives Matter movement.
Free Eugene! Free Eugene!
It was 2006, and Eugene Atkins had just been convicted of selling the heroin that killed Matt McKinney, a 17-year-old from a suburb southwest of Grand Rapids.
It's a system of injustice.
Atkins was facing mandatory life in prison without parole because he had a prior felony conviction for selling cocaine. His mom, Felicia Sims, refused to give up.
We'll just do everything we can to see that, he gets treated fairly.
A decade and a half later,
I never would have thought we'd end up in this place.
Sims still lives in Grand Rapids, but her son is 14 years into a life without parole sentence in federal prison in Louisiana, 1,000 miles away, but always in her thoughts.
All the time, every day. I'm sorry.
It's still hard to talk about.
Today he went to jail. It's like life as I knew it just stopped. People say, well, at least you can go see him, but it's not the same because I have to leave him there.
It's been 10 years since Sims last managed to visit her son in Louisiana.
Don't know if I'll ever get to see him again. If I'll get a call from there that, he's been killed in there or something.
As it stands, Eugene Atkins will die in federal prison, convicted under a federal statute passed in the 80s when the nation declared war on drugs. Sims knows her son must pay a price, but feels life is too high, especially since it was Matt McKinney's friend, Chris Perrin, who injected the 17-year-old and left him in a car overnight, overdosing, dying alone. Perrin cut a deal for lying to police and did 2 years. Atkins has lost several appeals and applied to have his sentence commuted. His case is listed as pending, but so are those of 10,000 other prisoners. So far, President Trump has commuted a total of 10 prison terms, including that of Alice Johnson, a nonviolent drug offender in for life until Kim Kardashian visited the White House to advocate for her release. So Sims is hopeful, but hardly optimistic.
The day the trial was over and they found him guilty, I felt like I had attended his funeral.
But Sims also recognized that Matt McKinney's parents did attend their son's funeral.
But I especially, felt for Matt's mom, losing a child.
I have to be his voice.
This is McKinney's mom in 2016, honoring her poetry-writing, animal-loving, forever 17-year-old by talking about addiction, fighting for treatment.
Addiction affects all of us. We're all victims.
She declined to comment on Atkins' bid for clemency, and federal prosecutors would not talk on camera for this story, but made it clear in 2006 Atkins was given several plea offers for much lighter sentences.
The second time Mr. Atkins did in fact enter a plea of guilty pursuant to this plea agreement. However, he withdrew his plea agreement, fired his lawyer, and proceeded to trial on all charges.
In a letter to Matt McKinney's family in 2012, Atkins apologized for his role in their son's death, said he should not have fought the charge, but that he was, quote, too caught up in the media and the different influences that were going on at the time. Among those who spoke out on Atkins' case back then, this man, part of a movement known as Millions More.
Pursuit of justice is not equally distributed among whites and blacks.
Federal prosecutors say race played no part in Atkins' case, but his family believes otherwise.
We grew up when wealthy was savage around there.
Patrick Wright is Atkins' younger brother. They grew up a block south of Wealthy.
$48,000 in cash, assault rifles, semi-automatic.
This is a story from 1997 when police arrested a dozen people tied to a violent gang called the Wealthy Street Boys. Atkins, not yet a drug dealer himself, would have been 12 years old at the time.
My mom, she didn't raise us to be those type of people. But at that time, like I said, the neighborhood we grew up in the 90s, we had to be those people. We had to be tough.
Eugene Atkins survived the neighborhood, but lost his life just the same.
And sometimes when I talk to him, I always tell him, see you in my dreams. I gotta tell him, we'll go to the beach. We'll go, go visit somewhere together.
It was actually a childhood friend of Eugene Atkins who reached out to us after starting a Change.org petition recently in support of his clemency. More than 3,000 people have signed so far. Nearly 40% of federal prisoners serving time for drug crimes are black. There are more than 4,000 prisoners serving life without parole. In studio control, I'm Target 8 investigator Susan Samples.